Good afternoon, good morning, and to some of you, even good evening to everyone joining us from around the world. We are thrilled to have hundreds of participants joining us today in this wonderful webinar. We have attendees from Vietnam, from the Philippines, we have from Thailand, from Malaysia, from India, we have attendees from Indonesia, from different parts of Europe, different parts of Africa, even in the USA and many other parts of the world. And once again, we would like to thank you all for being here and a very warm welcome to our webinar. We will be starting shortly as we wait for the rest of the attendees to join us. So for those of you who are already in, sit back and relax, and we will begin very shortly unpacking this great topic that we have for you for today. Once again, thank you for joining another eFeedLink webinar. My name is Alvin, and I will be your host for today. And before we dive in our main topic, let me take a moment to just say a few words about eFeedLink and our services. Our website, efeedlink.com, is one of the most visited information platform for the global feed and livestock industry. Our species focused website actually features dedicated channels delivering the latest market news, industry trends, technical insights, expert interviews, event highlights, and company updates, all designed to keep you informed about what's shaping the industry. And our magazine, Livestock and Feed Business, is the preferred publication for key decision makers in the feed and livestock sectors. It helps professionals stay ahead of market development, industry innovations, and emerging technologies. And you can subscribe to Livestock and Feed Business through tfeedlink.com to get your monthly copies of the magazine. And finally, we also host and organize webinars through our eFeedLink Agri Digital Hub, a platform dedicated to bringing together the livestock and feed industry. And before we begin, just a quick reminder, if you have any questions during today's presentation, please type them in the Q&A box on your Zoom control panel. And you can see that on your screens, and we'll address them during our panel and Q&A session at the end of the presentations. And today, we are going to unpack a great topic that we are eager to learn. The Alltech Asia Import Risk Analysis, on its fifth edition, provides an in-depth analysis of the prevalence and impact of mycotoxins across key traded ingredients. This report highlights the emerging trends shaping feed safety in 2026, thus helping Asian feed and livestock producers develop more targeted, proactive mycotoxin control strategies. In today's webinar, eFeedLink has invited Alltech's mycotoxin experts, Dr. Gazanfar Nasir and Dr. Radka Burutova, to interpret the latest findings on mycotoxin risk in imported raw materials and how mycotoxin insights from Alltech's latest report can help to mitigate the hidden threat and safeguard your bottom line. And to start off the presentations, please help me welcome our first speaker in today's webinar, Dr. Gazanfar Nasir, Regional Technical Manager, Ruminants and Mycotoxin Management in Asia in Alltech.
Thank you, Alvin. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone who has joined today's webinar. I think we have seen so many people joining this webinar, and it shows the interest of the people. It shows that how people understand the impact of mycotoxins, and they want to learn more about how these mycotoxins are impacting their livestock and how they can manage it effectively, especially in these circumstances when there is a complex challenge happening right now, and the impact of mycotoxins are very well studied, as well as their information is more available regarding the availability of these mycotoxins and the production of these mycotoxins in the field or during the transportation or other processes. This report, Asia Import Risk Analysis report, is basically gives a very deep understanding and clear understanding of what is happening in the region. in different parts of the world in regards to the mycotoxins, how the mycotoxins are growing, how the mycotoxins are evolving over a period of time. We are doing this analysis for many years now. We're collecting the data, collecting the samples from different parts of the world in every crops that is coming into the market. So we get the data, we analyze the data using our labs and our partner labs, and then we share that data with our customers and with the farmers like yourselves, so that you can better understand what is the current profile of mycotoxins. As we understand, mycotoxins keep on changing in different environmental conditions, in different seasons, in different crops. There is so many factors that are already impacting them. So if you look at Asia generally, Asia is a region that is importing a lot of grains, and the feed production is growing over a period of time. If you compare from 2012 to 2024, there has been a significant increase in the feed production in the Asia Pacific region from 350 million metric tons to 532 million metric tons. That's a significant increase in the growth of the feed production in different species in this whole region. And that basically gives us information that along with the feed increase, there is an increase that is happening in terms of import of different raw materials from different parts of the world. If we look at data for the import of different grains from different countries, we are seeing there's a significant increase that is happening, especially in Vietnam. Has been a very much a big jump in terms of the import of different, especially corn grains from different parts of the world into Vietnam. Similarly, it's growing in other parts of the in other countries as well. That trend basically tells us few things. One, from wherever we are importing these raw materials, whatever type of mycotoxins are growing in those regions, we are importing those mycotoxins as well. And then when we are storing these raw materials in our environment, in our conditions, either it's in the feed mill storage or either it's in the grain importers storage bins, uh, we are exposing that raw material to our environment and storing it for a period of time. That means now we are giving the ability for the local mycotoxins to be produced there as well. So we are getting a combination of mycotoxins that may not be normally produced in our region, but because we are importing the grains, that is coming in along with the grains as well. So we need to understand how different regions are having different mycotoxins and how we can, make an educated, decision how to manage those mycotoxins. There are different challenges that are in the feed and livestock producers that we are facing globally. One is obviously rising costs. The ingredient prices are rising. The producers are often having to compromise between the quality or the price of the raw materials because of these rising costs that are happening. Supply chain is disrupted because of climate change, geopolitical conflicts, trade restrictions affecting the availability of the key ingredients like soybean, corn, wheat. And we are seeing right now there's a conflict in the Middle East that might be affecting on the supply chain as well. There are alternative feed strategies. Producers, try to use, byproducts like distiller grains, food waste, and alternative feed sources. Try to compensate for the cost or for the availability of the good raw materials. And then obviously there's regulatory and sustainability challenges as well. There's strict feed safety regulations, requiring enhanced quality controls, adding cost, complexity, and growing demand for sustainability and non-GMO feed raw materials as well. So there are different challenges in the market as well, which is why it is become more important for us to do this Asia import risk analysis, so that you can understand what is happening in different regions, especially in terms of the quality in regards to the mycotoxins, and then you can make a decision from where you want to import, in which season, and how you need to manage your mycotoxin in certain season based on the profiles that you're getting. How we do this report is basically we have different lab network. One is our Alltech 37 Plus lab, which is basically LCMS based lab that detects more than 54 mycotoxins from individual raw materials, which gives a very detailed analysis of what is the mycotoxin profile of the raw materials, what is the mycotoxin levels, detailed analysis of the mycotoxin levels in that raw material as well. Then we have Alltech rapid read system, which is basically a quick test method utilizing lateral flow rapid test kits, which detects levels of 6 key mycotoxins. And then we have a partner SGS labs in Europe that uses ELISA testing methods for corn and other raw materials to detect 6 key mycotoxins. So we're utilizing all of these 3 methods to collect the samples and test the samples. Now we look at some of the results, insights from different parts of the world. If you look at Europe in 2025, mycotoxins was mainly driven by prolonged spring summer drought, followed by late rainfall, which basically increased the fungal pressure. And along with that, delayed harvest also created a strong regional variability. So in different parts of the Europe, you might find some differences in the overall mycotoxins. Obviously, the impact or the risk or sensitivity of different species will have a different impact based on the levels that we are finding. But one thing was common is that there is a co-occurrence. That means multiple mycotoxins being present in samples. If we look at United States, in 2025, mycotoxin profile in the corn was mainly contrasting weather stress, excessive rainfall in the western region, and drought in the eastern region. But overall, the level of mycotoxins were more in the western parts of the US compared to the 2024 seasons. And with that stress, when these crops will be coming into the storage conditions, obviously how we manage these crops in the storage conditions will impact further on the mycotoxin levels. In Canada in 2025, mycotoxin profile mainly showed multiple mycotoxins, contamination mainly DON, T2, zearalenone. They were mainly prevalent in these in Canada. In Brazil, the higher levels of DON, T2, zearalenone was widespread. Multiple mycotoxins were there. Overall risk was generally lower for the broilers, but dairy cows, but moderate for grow finisher pigs, and highlighting the species sensitivity. That means some species are more sensitive. For some species, the raw materials may be okay, but for some species, because they're more sensitive, the same raw material may not be okay, or maybe higher risk for those animals. Now, if we go into individual raw materials, um, yeah. So if you go with the specific raw materials, corn, if you look at corn in Europe, um, we tested different number of mycotoxins from August 2025 until December 2025. And what we found is that mainly DON, aflatoxin, T2, HT2, these were the main mycotoxins present. If you look at that average level of mycotoxins from 17 ppb of aflatoxin, 24 okra, 723 DON, 135 T2, 1185 fumonisin, and 80 zearalenone. This was the average mycotoxins. But there were some samples that has this level of maximum mycotoxin levels, which is significantly high. So now you need to look at maybe from certain part of Europe you're getting, which has a higher level, or maybe the raw material that you bought might contains these levels, or maybe this level, or maybe in between. So you need to look at that. But one thing is clear that if you look at 60% of the samples that were tested had fumonisin, 40% of the samples had aflatoxin, 30% of the samples had T2. So that basically shows that multiple mycotoxin contaminations were very common. Average, there was 5.4 mycotoxins present in this in corn from the Europe. And if you look at how these levels of mycotoxins translate into the risk for different species, for dairy cows, 22% of the samples had a higher risk. That means there is a chance of almost 300 grams of milk reduced or 300 ml of milk reduced per animal per day. For grower finisher pigs, the impact of the same levels of mycotoxins, like 51% of the samples was a high risk. That means they can lose average daily gain by 62 grams. And for broilers, around 38% of the samples had higher risk. That means they can lose average daily gain by 4.4 grams. And then feed efficiency, feed conversion rate changes by 1.82%. Now, if we look at corn in the US, corn in the US, average mycotoxins we found was 6.5 mycotoxins comparative to the European corn. There was much higher multiple mycotoxin contamination. And in the US, majority of the samples were tested with 37 plus lab. That means we had a very detailed analysis of individual raw materials. The key mycotoxins were type B trichothiocin, which is DON, T2, zearalenone, fusaric acid. These were the key mycotoxins. 99% of the samples tested had two or more mycotoxins. 99% of the samples. And if you look at average level of mycotoxin, you can see like 140 ppb, 163, 606. These are emerging mycotoxins that we're seeing that emerging coming into the raw materials more often, and their level and number is increasing as well. Fumonisin 1200, type A trichothiocins 24, and the other ones, and maximum levels were like very high levels. And if you look at their impact on the animals, again, for dairy cows, their 14% samples were high risk, and 200 ml of reduction average in the milk production. For grower finisher pigs, average daily gain might reduce up to 40 grams, and for broilers, 1.65 grams of average daily gain reduction and 2.34 points increase in the feed conversion rate as well. If you look at Brazilian corn, there again we tested for using the rapid test system here, and you can find here multiple mycotoxins present here as well. Aflatoxin 13 ppb, okra 2, DON was higher levels 359, and then fumonisin was like very high 1968. And then if you look at the maximum side, again the fumonisin was very high, like 29,000 ppbs. If you look at the impact on grower finisher pigs, like 19% of the samples had a higher risk. Broiler was mainly lower risk. For dairy cows, mainly was lower risk as well. Barley in Europe, again, there was 6.7 mycotoxin on an average, and the highest mycotoxin risk was coming from type B trichothiocins and zearalenone and fusaric X. 100% of the samples that we tested had more than 2 mycotoxins present in there. Again, emerging mycotoxins was at the top. 92% of the samples tested had emerging mycotoxins. 69% had fumonisins, 65% had type B, 56% had type A, and then so on. So it's like a significant, occurrence percentage. That means we test 100 samples, 92% of the 92 samples would have emerging mycotoxins, 70 samples would have fumonisins. And if you look at the impact, again, for dairy cows, because dairy cows are less sensitive to most of the mycotoxins comparative to other species which are more sensitive, but still the impact on the animals is quite visible, around 100 ml of milk reduced per day per animal. And then impact on the somatic cell count as well. Grower finisher pigs, average daily gain reduced by 26 grams. Broilers around 1.21 grams, and then 1% for increase in the feed conversion efficiency as well, feed conversion rate. If you look at wheat in the Europe, around again 6.1 average mycotoxins, 98% samples had more than 2 mycotoxins. Type B and type A trichothiocins were higher in terms of the occurrence percentage as well in terms of the levels. 91% emerging mycotoxins occurrence, 84% fumonisins, type B 76, type A 36, and similarly the average mycotoxins was also higher, and maximum was very high. In terms of the impact on different species, this was not causing so much impact, negative impact on the different species, but still for grower finisher pigs, around 6 grams average daily gain reduction. The broilers and the dairy cows was not significant negative impact for this raw material. But remember, mycotoxins can accumulate inside the body of the animals as well. So if you keep feeding even the low level of mycotoxins to the animals, they will start accumulating inside the body of the animals. And once the level is high enough, they can start impact on the animal body as well. If you look at the barley, wheat and barley in Canada, again, DON was 37% of the samples that we tested had DON, and average level was 376 ppbs, and then T2 was 18 ppb and zearalenone was 8. For grower finisher pigs, around 7% samples high risk. For broilers, 5%. For dairy cows, 3%. Not a high risk overall, but still, when you combine it with the multiple raw materials, some with high risk, some with the low risk, eventually you will have a significant risk going to the animals as well. Now, if we look at corn, and byproducts of the corn from North America, Europe, and Asia combined, around 8.9 average mycotoxin samples per raw material. 99% of samples has two or more than two mycotoxins. Highest risk of mycotoxins were mainly penicillium mycotoxins, type B trichothecenes, fumonisin, and all of these mycotoxins are present in all of these samples. So emerging mycotoxins were like 91% occurrence percentage. Type B was 90. Fumonisin was 90% of the samples had fumonisin. Fusaric acid was like 74%, zearalenone 53%, and even the average levels was very high as well. Generally, we have seen that corn or any byproducts coming in will have a higher risk and higher level of mycotoxin as well. And you can see that eventually translating into the risk to the animals as well. If you look at grower finisher pigs, around like 66% of the samples with a high risk, and you can lose around close to half a kg average daily gain. For broilers, around 11 grams of average daily gain, and for milk production, around 1.98 liters of milk production you can lose if the animals are eating these levels of mycotoxins. So there is a varying level of risk for different species. Byproducts have always been a major cause or major risk factors. The wheat, barley, or not too high risk, but the corn will be high risk as well. So this was the analysis, and this was the data that we collected, and you can have a look at that, understand these numbers and how these can translate into the impact on your animals. We can help you test your raw materials as well, and then we can look at that. Now I will hand back to Alvin to start with the next person. Thank you, Alvin.
Thank you, Dr. Gazanfar Nasir, for that very insightful presentation you have for us. And we have learned so much already, but there's more for us to know. And without further ado, to bring us another presentation, please help me welcome our next speaker is Dr. Radka Burutova, DVM PhD, Global Technical Support Technology Group in Alltech. Hi, Dr. Radka.
Hello. Thank you very much, Alvin. So my part today is talk about the mycotoxin management very briefly. Gas, please, can you change my slide? When we go to, or we want to talk about mycotoxin management, first, it's always very important to understand those mycotoxin patterns. So thank you very much, Gas. You have explained this into detail. And I think everybody understands one important message out of your presentation, and that's it, that we are not facing feeds or raw materials with one mycotoxin inside. That's the problem. We are always facing situations where we talk about multi-mycotoxin contamination, and this is extremely, extremely difficult to manage. It's a very difficult situation to manage because we have a different animal species, you're eating different feeds. Different animal species are differently sensitive. We have different ways of managing mycotoxins. And today I will talk about Alltech mycotoxin management program, which is not about one single strategy. It's about three very clear strategies. And the first one would be the mycotoxin risk identification. Gaz already explained to you. We talk about Alltech 37 Plus lab, where we can analyze 54 mycotoxins in each sample using UPLC MS method. Then we talk about rapid test kit systems coupled with app called, it's Alltech app called RapiRead, which gives us risk assessment reports. And then very important, once you get back the analysis from the lab, you basically get back the data, results. But these results are useless if they are not coupled with interpretation. What these levels and these combinations of mycotoxins mean for the animals, for the animal performance, feed efficiency, animal health, your profitability. And that's where it comes the second step from Alltech, a mycotoxin management program. And that's the mycotoxin risk quantification. In my opinion, this is the most important step, which makes a connection between these the first and the third step, which is first we identify the risk and then we want to mitigate the risk. But without the risk quantification, we cannot do that properly. So there we talk about the third step, which is very much dependent on the first two steps, and that's the mycotoxin risk mitigation, and that's the application of effective mycotoxin binders. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the first and the second step, we talk about risk assessment. So it's mycotoxin risk identification and quantification. First, when you analyze the mycotoxins, you can do it by two different ways. Or you need to test your finished feeds, or you need very complete analysis. It usually takes time, but it's very precise. You get back results with many mycotoxins analyzed. It's not to test for 2 or 1 or 3 mycotoxins. We can test every sample for up to 54 mycotoxins. And as Gaz was already explaining, many times the average number of mycotoxins per sample is 6, 7, and sometimes it's even much more. So you always get back the results with a cocktail of mycotoxins. When we talk about rapid test kit systems coupled with Alltech Rapid Read app, it's a very useful tool. You can use it on the spot, directly on the farm or in the feed mill, and it helps you to analyze mycotoxins quickly within a few minutes. It helps you to maybe reject some lots. It helps you to stop entering the highly contaminated raw materials into your operation. It can also help you to test the raw materials during the storage, which is very helpful. You don't need to wait for a week or 10 days for the results. You have the result back very quickly, and it's usually validated for raw materials. So with Alltech 37 Plus lab analysis, you can get back the results within a few days. It's very deep and precise, and you get the entire picture about the risk. While with rapid test kit systems, you can take quick decisions. But these two systems have something in common, and that's the risk assessment report. That's the risk quantification you get back. We see it in the middle of this slide. We call it traffic light report, where you can see one very important information, and Gaz was mentioning this several times when he was talking about REQ. Next slide, please, Gaz. REQ is a unique system, risk assessment system, which was developed by Alltech many years ago. It's a dynamic system, so it evolves over the time. It's based on science and scientific peer-reviewed papers. And basically, it's a one number in each risk assessment report, which tells you what is the cumulative risk of the cocktail of mycotoxins in each sample in a batch of samples. We can make REQ for one sample. I can have REQ for 10 samples, for 1,000 samples, for 20,000 samples, whatever I want. I can always create REQ. REQ is very unique for animal species, animal category, and it's also very unique for each mycotoxin. So it's a very important number, which can have a different value from 0 until whatever you want to say. And lower the number, lower the risk. Higher the number, higher the risk. And it's very easy to understand each risk assessment report thanks to the REQ number. If this number is low, your mycotoxin risk is low. It doesn't say it's no risk, it will say low. If this number is moderate for that particular animal species, then your mycotoxin risk for the cocktail of mycotoxins in the sample is moderate. And if it's high, it's high. Based on this REQ number and the value there, and at the level of the risk, you can decide what is what inclusion rate of a mycotoxin binder you need in your finished feed. Next slide. Why are we focusing on deoxynivalenol? Gaz was talking a lot about type B trichoticins. Type B DON is a type B trichoticin, indeed it is. If we talk about type B trichoticins, 95% of the time it's going to be deoxynivalenol, okay? It's just in the group of these type B trichoticins because in the entire group we analyzed for several DONs. Don triglucoside, the 3-acetylated DON, 15-acetylated DON, there is also nivalenol in this group, but usually DON dominates the entire risk. When we talk about the global risk, 50% of the global risk comes from type B trichoticins group, and type B trichoticins usually means DON. Next slide. When I dive deeper into the European European mycotoxin analysis from the previous year. So here you will see the prevalence of some mycotoxin groups in European wheat, also Canadian wheat and barley, and also US corn. And comparison between the prevalence, so how many samples were positive in that particular raw material, but the prevalence is not always the most important thing. We can have highly prevalent mycotoxins, like the emerging mycotoxins. They are highly prevalent in European wheat and also highly prevalent in US corn, but indeed they are not very toxic. And the unique thing about deoxynivalenol or DON or vomitoxin is that it's highly prevalent mycotoxin and is also very toxic mycotoxin, and that makes it very risky. That's why we are always talking about DON, because it's almost always there, highly prevalent, so many samples are positive for this particular toxin, but it's not innocent. It does nothing to the animals. It has a significant impact on animal performance and final animal producer profitability. So we look at the EU wheat, we see that 91% of samples were positive for emerging mycotoxins, and 80% were positive for type B trichotices, which is mostly DON. 83% of samples were positive for fumonisins, but type B trichoticins, particularly DON, is the most risky mycotoxin in European wheat. If you go to Canadian wheat and barley samples, we see less data in here because it's data from the rapid test kit system. We see that 41% of all wheat and barley samples collected and analyzed in Canada last year were positive for DON, but DON was also the most risky mycotoxin in wheat and barley from Canada. If you go to US corn, we see that 94% of US corn was positive for the emerging mycotoxins, 82% for type B trichoticins, and 92% for fusaric acid. But indeed, again, the most risky mycotoxin, it's indicated by red, is dioxynivalenol. So everything, I would say everything, is about DON. Next slide, please. And DON is not only the most prevalent mycotoxin, usually highly prevalent, doesn't need to be the most, could be sometimes fusaric acid takes over, sometimes fumonisins, emerging mycotoxins usually take over the first position, but it's very risky in whatever raw material we take. The most important raw materials, usually it's DON. And it's a mycotoxin which is very difficult to be managed. The effective mitigation of DON is a problem. You have to store it on the field because it's produced by Fusarium graminearum. Fusarium usually likes warm or mild warm weather, but high humidity, a lot of precipitation, a lot of rain. It can infect a small grain in the stage of flowering. So that's the stage where the small grain like wheat, barley are the most sensitive. And if the weather is favorable, we cannot do anything about it. If the fields are flooded, you can expect very high type B trichoticin levels, DON levels in that particular crops. What we can do indeed are some good agronomic practices like crop rotation, deep tillage, our fungicides application against Fusarium head blight, for example. But as I said, if the weather is disastrous, the best practice is not going to help you. That's the problem with DON. We have in European Union, we have European recommended levels or guideline limits, which indeed, for example, for calves, it's 2 ppm for dioxynivalenol. This is 2000 ppb. This is when we talk about monomycotoxin contamination. We talk about healthy animals in scientific studies. We don't talk about mixtures of mycotoxins like DON in combination with fusaric acid, or when we talk about ruminants, we don't talk about presence of penicillic acid, which is super rumen toxic and can basically kill the effective detoxification system of the cow. So those European guideline levels, in my opinion, are useless. We'll talk about physical methods. Certain cleaning of grain can help with aflatoxin contamination. Okay, if you remove dust, you remove broken kernels, you can significantly remove aflatoxin contamination. It's not that much valid for DON, and also thermal processing is not going to work for any of the mycotoxins because all of them are very thermostable. And the last possible defense or last possible protection against DON would be the in-feed technologies. We have the binders, adsorbents, clays, pure yeast, or combinations. And they are not all working equally well because we have to realize that DON has a very low polarity. It's not a mycotoxin which you can absorb easily like aflatoxin, for example, okay? It doesn't work the same way. In the US, as one very effective strategy, how to deactivate DON in the feed, and that's the use of sodium metabisulfate, was not permitted in the European Union, for example, and can lead to production of some toxic metabolites in the feed. It's not a very safe strategy, but it's efficient. Yeah, we have to admit. And then there is a microbial detoxification where the microbes can enzymatically degrade DON and change it to less toxic metabolite like D or M1. And such detoxification naturally appears in the rumen of cow, for example. Indeed, these microbes are not thermostable, so you have to be very careful to use them in all feeds which are pelleted, extruded, and also different pH levels can limit the efficacy of the buck, which can produce the enzymes against DON. And then we have also purified enzymes, deoxydases, but these strategies are not really suitable for feed industry because, as I said, all enzymes are extremely unstable, so it's not in use right now for any of the mycotoxin binders, deactivators, or mitigators, or however you call it. Next slide, please. Now I will shortly talk about the new generation of Mycosoap. It's Mycosoap A+, Evo, and Mycosoap Evo. Next slide, please. This is a patent pending technology. And basically, we talk about the same products we used before, but much stronger against some very important mycotoxins like deoxynivalenol. So when we talk about the new generation of Mycosoap, Mycosoap A+ Evo or Mycosoap Evo, these products are composed of classic yeast wool extract is the basic ingredient. Then we use clay materials like bentonite 1 and 558, algae material, and the new ingredient which is added, bacterial biomass rich in protein. And this new ingredient is absolutely a breakthrough technology because it allows us to increase the binding efficacy against deoxynivalenol and fusaric acid significantly. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the new Evo products or Mycosoap Evo product line, we have to say I have very limited time, so I will talk about the strengths right now. Mycosoap Evo, Mycosoap A+ Evo are supported by 25 years of research. We have 3 meta-analytical publications, meta-analysis in layers, broilers, and swine. It's a specially formulated product to combat key mycotoxins like DON and fusaric acid. Why fusaric acid, for example? Fusaric acid, we don't talk much about this mycotoxin, but it's a toxin which usually appears in the corn together with DON, and it potentiates the impact of DON. So they work in synergism. So we shouldn't separate these two mycotoxins. We should, if we find fusaric acid in the feed, then we can expect that the effect of DON on the animal is going to be much higher. The products have proven efficacy up to 70% binding DON in vitro, also supported by ex vivo and vivo data. This is really the highest one achieved in the industry so far. I'm excited myself about this technology because the overall risk reduction when we think about multi-mycotoxin contamination with Mycosoap Evo product line is going to be around 70%. Depends on the pH, of course. It depends on the mixture of mycotoxins. With some mycotoxins, the product works extremely well. With some mycotoxins, it works less. But the main message is this product is a multi-mycotoxin binder with a focus binding of DON and fusaric acid. At the same time, it works extremely well against penicillic acid and the other penicillium mycotoxins. These toxins are extremely toxic for ruminants and for the rumen environment. So if you can combine these three mycotoxins at the same time, you can significantly help the animal to have the best performance possible. And if you talk about the entire support the Alltech can give, it's not only about the product application, it's definitely about the entire mycotoxin management program. So we talk about testing, the risk identification, quantification, and then mitigation, also digital analysis tools, and also the expert guidance, which is very important. Because first you need somebody to teach you how to manage mycotoxins, and then when you are able to do that, you can manage mycotoxins very, very well. But indeed, the most important message from my side today is that with Microsoft Evo product line, you can basically reduce the entire mycotoxin risk by around 70%. Thank you very much. I give my word back to Alvin.
Thank you, Dr. Radka, for that very wonderful presentation. And now let's transition into our panel discussion where we'll be addressing the questions and key areas of interest from our attendees. And to get us started, I'd like to invite our panelists to join us this uh, webinar and all our speakers as well.
Thank you, Alvin, and thank you for once again helping us to host the Asian Import Analysis webinar. You've already seen some comprehensive presentations from Dr. Ghaznafar Nasir and Dr. Radka Boratova. I'll now also invite Richard Liu and Gustavo Saribiro to come off mute, turn on their videos, and add even more expertise to this insightful webinar. I'll begin the panel with a question, a really good question from the chat, from the Q&A from Pradeep, and thank you for the questions that we've had so far. Keep them coming, and we'll integrate them across the panel discussion, and we'll have some time for a quick wrap up and a Q&A at the end. Pradeep, your question was related to the number of samples that were tested in each case across the ingredients and the regions. Without going into those numbers specifically, because it would take us a bit of time to break that down, when we think of the Alltech harvest analysis, it's essentially covering almost 2,500 new crop samples across those regions of Europe and North America. So that's what we're looking at, essentially in total 2,500 new crop samples that are coming into the Alltech harvest analysis. Those samples, they're randomized, they're non-biased, so that's again one of the strengths of the Alltech harvest analysis, and that's the uniqueness of it. Is it's a true new crop analysis, a true new crop analysis of crops, and then also it's randomized and non-biased. So we're getting a really good representation, both from a numbers perspective and then also a geographic representation. So that's a pretty robust sample size in terms of what we're looking at, and then it's obviously broken down across the various ingredients. Radka and Dr. Gaz, if it's okay, following up with you maybe quickly in terms of what you've just presented. Looking back on the previous years, I think we've been doing this now for almost 5 years, and obviously that the nature of mycotoxins, contamination patterns change each year. If you're looking at the 2025 results, how would you say they compare to previous years? Are there any surprises in the data this year that feed and livestock producers in Asia should be aware of? Maybe Dr. Gaz, if you want to kick us off with that, and then Radka, you can come in and build on that as well.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think what we are seeing from the last 5 to 10 years, I think we're not surprised what we saw in 2025 as well. We are seeing a trend that is happening, especially related to type B trichothecenes, which is basically DON and other DON-related mycotoxins. Their occurrence is increasing. That means how many times we're finding it in different samples, that is increasing. And then their level is increasing as well. And that is creating a challenge for the producers. There could be multiple reasons to that. One could be that they are being produced by fusarium species of mold, and that's a field origin mold species. That means they grow more in the field side. And what's happening in the field? The environment is changing. The climate change is impacting on the field. Unexpected rains, unexpected drought conditions, that is impacting, and that is giving rise to not only these dawn-related mycotoxins, but as well as emerging class of mycotoxins. Remember one thing, that if you go back 5 years, not many people were talking about dawn or impact of dawn or fumonisin to the animals, specifically in Asia. But does that mean dawn was not present, or does that mean dawn was not impacting the animals? It just means we were not testing and we didn't know about that, but the animals were impacted. Same is with the emerging class of mycotoxins. We do not have too much information about these mycotoxins before. Now we have that they're impacting the animals and their level is also increasing. So they could be impacting. So that's why it becomes important that the mitigation that you use should be able to broadly bind these mycotoxins. Maybe you know certain mycotoxins are impacting today or not. But as dawn was there few years back, impacting the animals, these are present as well, and they're impacting the animals as well.
Raquel, would you like to add anything to that? You certainly
Yeah.
have great visibility on the European data, but you also see a lot of data coming in from around the world as well.
Yeah, I agree with Gus that the climate change is the driver there for change, because the molds they adapt. They have huge ability to adapt to these climate changes, higher CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere, more precipitation somewhere, more drought somewhere else. But what we can see, for example, in Europe is also that the agriculture practices are changing. When I travel across Europe and I start to talk about the EPL or crop rotation, everybody's like, no, we don't do that anymore. No, it's not ecological. We cannot do that. Nobody is doing crop rotation. So we have to think that the agriculture practices have changed a lot. And that's in favor more molds and more mycotoxins. That's one thing I wanted to add. And the second one is our detection methods have evolved tremendously. We can detect more mycotoxins, we can detect lower concentrations, and that's where we see more. It's not that, as Gas said, it's not that it wasn't there. It was always there. We just see it. And some molds, they really change their behavior. In European perspective, yes, so the aspergillus. The aspergillus is moving north. That's because the climate now in central, southeastern Europe is suitable for this particular mold to grow and produce aflatoxins. So in those parts of the Europe where we didn't have aflatoxin problem, let's say 5 years ago, we do. Now for the last 4 years, aflatoxin B1 is a huge problem in corn for Europe. Yeah, that's my addition.
Thank you, Radka. Building on that, Gustavo, good to have you with us today, and we'll bring you into the panel at this point. And you're dealing with monogastric customers, both pig and poultry, on a daily basis in your travels across the Asian region. A lot of those customers, a lot of those clients using soybean, the derived ingredients. While we don't have it in the report specifically, we obviously have data in our system related to soybean, and I know it's something you're looking at quite a lot as well as you're working with those customers. Anything to be aware of within soybean? And we probably talk a lot about corn being one of the, I guess, the riskier imported grains. Would we be underestimating the risk in soybean compared to corn?
Yeah, perfect, Martin. Hello, everyone. This is a very interesting question. Like, Asia imports a significant volume of soybean meal, and this is like one of the key components in the monogastric diets across all the region. Based on our results, of course, we were detecting several mycotoxins coming from soybean meal and also from some derivative ingredients. That mycotoxins that we were finding, including emerging mycotoxins, fumonisins, and fusaric acids, in general, that samples were not giving really a high risk, or showing more a low risk equivalent quantities from our RAQ, especially for swine and poultry. But these indicates that soybean meal is a lower risk ingredient from our mycotoxins in that standpoint of view. But when we are importing, we also need to pay attention here in Asia. We need to emphasize the storage conditions. This will play a critical role. So if we have a poor handling, high humidity, or extended the storage, this can really significantly alter the mycotoxin profile and can increase the contamination risk.
Super. So I think, in summary, Gustavo, typically one of the lower risk ingredients, and particularly compared to corn. But I think what you're saying is it's never no risk. There's always going to be something there, and particularly when we think of it in an Asian context with shipping and storage and so on. I guess it's something that we should be watching. Radka, maybe wrapping up the data side of things, or the results sides of things at this point. Just a quick question on emerging mycotoxins. It's, if you look at the charts that Dr. Gaz presented, it's a group of mycotoxins that is typically sitting right up the very top in terms of prevalence, at least. For the audience today, giving them a bit of a context to that, are we learning more about that toxin group, particularly in terms of, I guess, toxicity or impact on the animal? What's the research around that compared to maybe the prevalence, which we're seeing lots of, but understanding more in terms of the impact on the animal, and how is that being set up?
The emerging mycotoxins are almost everywhere. If you buy a bottled water and you will test it for emerging mycotoxins, probably will find some N-niates inside. So it's not about the prevalence. In my opinion, they're highly prevalent, we know that. But so far, even EFSA stated they are not a risk for human health, but not because they are not, but because the EFSA state, because we don't have enough in vivo data where we can say they are these and these toxic. There are some scattered data in sheep, in rats, in mice, and guinea pigs, in dogs, in cats. Yes, they are, but we are still missing data in the most important animals, like the farm animals, ruminants, swine, and there are some data in chicken and poultry, yes, but it's very unsatisfactory at this moment. And yes, the researchers are working on it, but it's a slow process. It's not going to happen within 1 year. Probably in the next 5-10 years, we will have more data. I'm not saying they are not toxic. Nobody says that. But at this moment, we don't have enough scientific evidence how very toxic they are or how not very toxic they are. They are, and they definitely have a kind of interactions with the other mycotoxins. So we should not underestimate them. They are important, and they can have synergistic, additive, maybe antagonistic interactions with DON and the most other very important mycotoxins. So yes, they're an important part of the cocktail of mycotoxins.
Thank you, Radka. Storage mycotoxins, and the word storage has come up a lot already in the last 45 minutes or so. And it's also a question that is appearing quite commonly within the Q&A today. We'll maybe shift to that topic for a moment. And it always reminds me of a quote from our good colleague, Dr. Max Hawkins, who's based in the US. And he would always say, grain quality will never improve post-harvest. Grain, when it's harvested, is at the best quality it's going to be. So always a consideration in terms of what we should be looking at when those grains move into storage and shipping. Gaz, looking again at that topic, what should feed and livestock producers be focusing on right now in terms of practical tips around storage and grain management? And then maybe it's one for the group we'll build on. All of you are spending time with livestock and feed producers in your daily role, and maybe some of the most common mistakes or the areas of improvement that you would see in that area. But kicking off with Gaz, maybe a few practical tips around that topic of storage and grain management.
Yeah, I mean, like storage is one of the areas where a farmer or a producer can make some impact, or can can make sure that the quality of the ingredient stays as good as they bought it, does not get worse than that what they bought it for. So it becomes very challenging, especially in Asia, when there is environmental conditions are very hot and humid conditions. And if you're not managing it well, you are increasing the risk of molds and mycotoxins growing in your storage conditions. So you buy it at certain level of mycotoxin or certain level of risk or raw material, but when the finished feed is being produced and animals are eating that feed, the risk is significantly increased because some things happen during the storage. So there are a few things that we can do. One thing is it's a part of Alltech mycotoxin management program as well. We call it a myco audit. What that basically does is that we visit a feed mill, we check all the risk areas from where there is a chance of molds getting into the feed or the raw materials. We identify those risk areas. We take some samples for mold count to check how the mold is growing inside the production line, either it's in the bins, storage bins, or in the mixers or the grinders or the coolers or the pellet machines. We take some samples to test for the molds, and then based on that we give some report to the producers to manage it. Flushing protocols, there should be a proper flushing protocols in the feed mill to properly clean the feed mill regularly. If you're seeing a mold buildup happening in the mixer, which you can open easily, you can have a look at every day, that means there is a significantly higher buildup of mold in the areas which you can't see every day. The elevators, the conveyors, you are not seeing every day. So there could be significantly higher buildup of those molds in there. So having a proper protocol for flushing the feed mills, you can utilize a mold inhibitor. If you're storing the grains for a longer period of time, you can utilize the mold zap, which is a mold inhibitor during the storage conditions. When you're storing the raw materials, especially if in the bag, either it's a finished feed or the individual raw materials, make sure there's enough ventilation available. Make sure in the production line or in the feed mill, there's a proper ventilation available. Make sure there's no birds coming into the production line or in the feed because they will, defecate there. That increase the chance of external contamination happening there. Make sure there's no insects in these areas because they will damage the grains, and the damaged grains there is more chances of molds and mycotoxins growing in there as well. So there are a few things that producers can do. Ventilation is one thing, making sure there's a proper ventilation happening between the bags, making sure there's a flushing protocols available, making sure if you are storing something for 2, 3, 6 months, there's a mold inhibitor in there as well.
Anyone else in the group want to add to that in terms of maybe things we see on a practical basis or opportunities for improvement in the field? And okay, if we're confident Gaz has covered off that's good. We'll move on from that. The next area maybe we'll go to, and it's an area that's influencing, I guess, not just agriculture but all of our lives on a daily basis, and that's the topic of AI or artificial intelligence, and certainly it's becoming a bigger topic within our own sector. Radka, in terms of pre-harvest mycotoxin control and mycotoxin prediction, we're seeing a lot of buzz or a lot of interest around that, and there's a couple of projects in motion in various parts of the world with this topic. Anything to report on that yet? Any projects that you would see or say are showing real promise in that area, or something that could have a significant influence in terms of how we think about mycotoxin control in the future?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and the AI is interesting because it can combine the weather data, satellite imagery, soil moisture, and also historical contamination to predict usually to predict aflatoxins, monogens, but mainly deoxynivalenol risk before the harvest. So that's the objective of these AI models so we know what is approximately the contamination of the grains or crops with these particular they exist. They guide us. We can early detect the stress of the plants via the drones and satellites, and also we can do smart irrigation to reduce the drought stress of the plants, or we can estimate. We can do targeted use of.
We lost you for a moment, Radka, but you can continue.
Okay. We can do a better our targeted use of biocontrols like AflaSafe. And yes, also Alltech is involved in a Wageningen project which is focused on deoxynivalenol in small grains, wheat, barley, and also in maize, but still running. It's a several years project, and we will see in a few years' time. But basically, yes, it's knowing the historic data, or having the historic data of contamination, and based on this historic data, to predict what is going to happen in the next year, for example. And yeah, as you said, there are some real world projects in place, not only the bargaining one, but also the My Toolbox is a very famous one in the European Union, or USDA, ML-DON models, ICRISAT, that's for the AFLA-SAFE. And there are many digital, commercial digital farmer apps where the farmers are using these apps every day. Yeah, so my answer is yes, AI is the future, but so far, some models are already working and are in place. Yes, that's true. But what we don't see and what we would need to see in the future, I'm not saying the next 5 years, probably maybe next 10, 20 years, is the prediction of the multi-mycotoxin contamination. That's the objective. That's what we would like to know. And that's not happening yet. So yes, some scattered data done for monisms, maybe AFLA, yes, but that's it. Yeah, it's evolving. It's growing, and it will come. It's just a question of time.
It's interesting, Radka. Obviously, yeah, AI is not a new topic, and there are certain models that have been in play for a few years now. But we also see within the data that ourselves and other groups are producing that actually mycotoxin prevalence and risk levels continue to increase. So it's obviously not going to be the silver bullet. Maybe that the industry would like. I guess the fundamentals of mycotoxin control post harvest. Would you agree are still going to be in place? It's another tool in our toolbox, but up to now at least, it doesn't seem to be having a really significant influence on reducing mycotoxin prevalence or levels just yet. I guess it's early days somewhat, but maybe just a quick comment on that in terms of how it fits into the overall program then going forward, and how I guess post-harvest mycotoxin control is still going to be critical.
Yeah, post-harvest at this moment is very important because that works. We know it works. It's in place for many years, and it protects the animals, improves the feed efficiency, and improves the profitability of the farmer. And in my opinion, it's more like information for the farmers to take the best informed decision which raw material to use and which not. If I know already, let's say in April that this year that the wheat is going to be much worse than the barley, I can change my plans, and I can rather make my orders for the barley for the next year than for the wheat. So it's just by knowing, you cannot unknow, okay? The information is the power. It's not that you can do something practically in the field. Which, okay, if you can still do with, for example, AFLA-SAFE, it's something else. You can apply the biocontrol somewhere in the fields where it's needed. That's something where you can do proactively something with aflatoxins. But if you talk about DON and fusaric mycotoxins and the typical AI tools we have now, it's at this moment, I don't think it's about the management on the field. It's rather about knowing what is coming and yeah, organize yourself accordingly if you are a farmer or feed miller.
Thank you, Radka. Well, it's certainly one I think we'll all be watching with interest, and there's a lot of excitement in the area. So maybe when we come back in 12 months' time, we'll have even something further to share with you. Staying, on the topic of maybe looking ahead and some crystal balling here again for you, Radka, if that's okay. We held our Global Harvest broadcast a few weeks ago from our HQ facility in Kentucky, USA. We had a meteorologist on that session with us, Dr. Jan Dutton, and he spends his time looking at weather models and what impact it's going to have on crop quality and crop yields. He was predicting, and it's more than Jan is predicting, that we're going to see this development of an El Nino type conditions returning in mid 2026. So what impact could that have on mycotoxin risk, and what type of conditions could that bring for crop growers? And again, what could it mean if we come back here in 12 months' time? Could we be looking at a different scenario compared to what we've just seen from Dr. Gassensfar's results?
Yeah, El Nino is very powerful. It's a climate pattern in which the unusual warm Pacific Ocean waters disrupt the north.
I think we've
The weather.
lost you again, Radka, but you're back. Sorry, you're back again.
Sorry. So we know that El Nino is very powerful. Okay. It has impact over the global weather. So whatever country or continent you talk about, the El Nino will have an impact. If you talk about field conditions, El Nino can cause in South Asia or Southeast Asia, then we can expect more hotter weather, more drier spells, and this means probably more aflatoxins for monocysts in maize, typically. In the other parts of Asia, we can expect humid or late rains in some regions, and that favors fusarium, mycotoxins like Don, Zara, non-type 8 trichoticins in wheat, barley, or maize. And that's what the El Nino is going to do. In some parts of Asian region, you will have hotter and drier weather. In some, you will have humid weather, and that's the worst combination. So you will get a combination of mycotoxins like aflatoxins and formaldehydes, and then fusarium at the same time. When we talk about storage, it can be also be impacted because the heat and the humid swings make it harder to keep grains cool and dry. And that can favor other mycotoxins like ochratoxin A, for example. Also, aflatoxins can be produced during the storage. And then we talk about the imports. We know the El Nino has influence over the weather not only in Asia, but also in South America, in North America, in Africa. And El Nino will create this mixed dry and wet patterns. And that's more variability and more multi-mycotoxin lots, aflatoxins for monocysts, and type A, type B trichoticins, emerging mycotoxins as well. And this also can cause the shifts in sourcing, what Gaz was talking about, due to the yield and price shocks. There is a higher chance of non-traditional origins with inconsistent mycotoxin control. That's the problem. So mycotoxin control and a lot of testing can really be an important step of mycotoxin management. But if you have to take raw material from unknown or not the best source, because that's the pressure, it's probably not going to be so well controlled. Every time we have El Nino, we have more mycotoxins. That's what we expect. And it's not only the more, but it's going to be a combination of those warm related mycotoxins, warm and hot related mycotoxins like aflatoxins, fumonisis, and humidity related mycotoxins and this fusarium. So that's what I expect. Next year it's going to be, or this year, because it's probably predicted mid of June, somewhere in the summer when it comes. So these are next year, probably we will have more problems with mycotoxins, yes.
Just another one of the many challenges that feed and livestock producers and farmers face. So yeah, we look forward to see what that could bring, we'll certainly keep you updated with information as that comes forward in terms of what it's meaning for contamination patterns and mycotoxin risks. Bringing back in Richard and Gustavo and Radka, you shared some of the exciting breakthroughs that Alltech are making within their own mycotoxin mitigation program and the launch of the Mycosorb Evo range of technologies. We'll spend a few minutes with Richard and Gustavo discussing a little bit more on that. And again, it's coming back to a few questions within the chat, and one in particular around the levels of DON. Again, DON is something that's been prevalent across the webinar today. Gustavo, maybe going to you first on that. At what DON levels do you start to see real performance losses, and what even within guideline limits, what should producers be considering there in terms of the actual contamination levels before we get into maybe the mitigation of that?
Yeah, I think that like one of the strategies that we need to move also forward is to, instead of looking just for the single focus on a toxin, we need to understand much more about the multi-mycotoxin strategy. So when we look, for example, to DON, here in Asia, we do not have the limits. We can go to the European Union to see what are the limits for DON, but will be just for a single mycotoxin. If we have 1 or 3, 5, 6, 7 different mycotoxins, that risk will bring different impact to different species in the livestock. So I wouldn't like to say really a specific number that you say that you will see immediately impacts. I would more to say what is really the mycotoxin profile that we have, looking to the capabilities of Alltech, the REQ, the unit that we use, we can later on the expectations in terms of average daily gain or feed conversion that diet will bring to the animal. So instead of focus on one mycotoxin, let's try to move and try to understand more the multi-mycotoxin profile, and then we can have a strategy.
Good message, Gustavo. Building on that, Richard, tell us a little bit more about the Mycosorb Evo range of technologies, how it's set up from I guess a portfolio perspective, and how it's tailored to different risk levels and species and so on. And then probably most importantly for the audience on the call today, the availability of the product and what should they do if they have an interest in learning more about the Mycosorb Evo technologies.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. So for Mycosorb Evo, I think based on Alltech 25 years experience in the mycotoxin binders and also spent 3 years to development this product, is because of the we find out that the DON and also the emergent mycotoxin like the fusaric acid, which is really impact is always there in recent 5 years, our kind of the harvest report. So I think according to that, we Alltech have a really suggestion that the Mycosorb Evo have a better ability to absorbing the DON, which is kind of improving almost 3 times of the absorbing ability, and also for the fusaric acid, also kind of the improving about 5 times ability. So it means that if how to management your mycotoxin issue in your animal. For the breeding animal, you can consider to using the Mycosorb A plus Evo, and then also including the sow, the boiler breeder, the layer breeder, and also dairy cow. You can thinking about to using Mycosorb A plus Evo to control the mycotoxin problem, and then for the kind of the if your mycotoxin level, which is just in the moderate risk, then you can consider to use a Mycosorb Evo. And also many of the monogastric animal, you also using a Mycosorb Evo, which is already good enough to control and also management your mycotoxin issue. And then for the fast growing animal like the boiler and also fattening pigs, and also the feedlot, you also can consider to using the Mycosorb LR, which means in the low risk situation. So I think that is Alltech kind of the 3 level of the recommendation to mitigate the mycotoxin issue. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Richard. And those products ready to go, available to order in Asia. I think that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, I think all the Asia countries, I think only 2 countries are still on the way for the registration. Then almost all the Southeast Asia country is already have a product and already on the way to provide the Alltech better solution for everyone. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to getting the new products into the region and supporting even better mycotoxin control. As we've seen from the data today, the mycotoxin issue is not going away, and it's ever changing, and that's why it's important that we continue to evolve our solutions and tailor them precisely to the challenges that feed and livestock producers are facing. At this point, we'll wrap up the panel discussion. Thank you all for the fantastic insights. We've got lots of questions that we could have stayed going with, and I've got more topics in my own head that I'd love to be able to talk through with you today. But we've already gone over time with the session today, so we'll wrap it up there. We will be sharing the full Asian import analysis report over the next few hours. So please keep an eye within your inbox, and you'll see that appearing, and you'll be able to look even closer at some of the data that Dr. Gaznafar presented at the start of the presentation. If you do have questions on that, or if you have any other questions on the Mycosorb Evo range of technologies, or any of the general topics that we've discussed today, please don't hesitate to get in touch. There'll be contact details in the report to do that, or contact any of your local Alltech representatives. Thank you all once again for joining. It's great to have you back for our 5th year. We'll hopefully be back here in 12 months' time once again with another session, and we'll wrap up the panel at this point and hand back to Alvin.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And well, there's a lot of interest in the topic. That's understandable. I think there's a lot of excitement from Alltech and towards our attendees. And it looks like that is all the time that we have for today's webinar. And I think, as Martin said, if you do have more questions and clarifications for your interest, you can always contact your friendly Alltech partner, and he will be happy to assist you. And once again, we would like partners here, as well as our panelists, Martin Minchin, Dr. Richard Liu, and Gustavo Sa Ribeiro, for sharing your knowledge in today's topic. And of course, to Alltech for bringing us this wonderful webinar. And lastly, but not least, to our attendees, we appreciate you being here, and we welcome any feedback you have on this webinar. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and we would love to see you next time. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.